This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
3, 2, 1. Okay, welcome Rabbi Sai. We begin, this time for real. Parshas Noach. Baruch Hashem, we're all here, Gesundheit, for another season. Shev Siyata Deshmaya. Galinai v'abitin aflois mitayra secha. So Parshas Noach, I think Parshas Noach, we think we have the story down. I think we're all pretty confident that we got the story. We know exactly what happened. They were bad. The people were bad. They were wicked. They robbed. They did very bad things. There was a lot of rain. There was the great deluge. All the animals got onto the ark. Noach had a hard time on the ark. He tried to feed them. One day he came late. The lion was a little annoyed. He gave it to Noach. Noach is coughing up blood. He can't wait until it's over. He sends out the raven. He sends out the dove. The dove comes back with the UN sign of peace, with the olive branch. And then Noach comes out, and we'll call it a day. We think we're pretty confident we have this great story down. But one thing I guarantee you is that after today's shiur, we're going to have a revolutionary understanding, a new appreciation for exactly what took place. Let's look at some of the details. So first, Noach sends out the raven. Why in the world would Noach send out a raven? A raven is a bird of prey. A raven is a vicious bird. It does not listen to anybody, and it's not going to listen to Noach. What was the purpose of sending out the raven? A raven is not a great flyer. It doesn't fly far distances. What was Noach trying to do by sending out this oirev? If anything, the oirev is like the most corrupt of all the birds. What's he sending out the oirev for? And then he sends out the yoina. And the pasuk says, "V'atavei elav hayoina le'es arav." The yoina came back evening time. V'hinei ale zayis taraf b'fiha. And there was a olive branch ripped in its mouth. An olive branch? You gotta be kidding me. What, an olive tree is the tallest tree? Olive tree is not the tallest tree. I can name you 50 trees that are taller than an olive tree. Or something like that. You have a maple, you have oak, you have evergreen. You know, you would think he went to in California, you have the redwoods, sequoias, keep on coming. There are a lot of trees that are a lot taller than the olive tree. And even though the fruit trees, it's from the shorter of the trees. It happens to be, it's a beautiful tree. But why would the yoina bring back specifically a zayis? And if anything, it's very shver. The zayis is the most bitter of all the trees. Why wouldn't the yoina take something sweet, something that tastes good, something that's delicious? Doves do not munch on olives. Why would the yoina bring back an ale zayis? Then vayeda Noach, and Noach knew ki kalu hamayim me'al ha'aretz, that the water had subsided. Vayachaloid shivas yom achirim. So Noach waits another 7 days. Vayishalach es hayoina, and he sends out the dove. And these words really stirred something in me. V'la yasefa shuv elav oid. And the yoina did not again return to him another time. V'loi yasefa shuv elav oid. That's very dramatic. It should say v'loi shuv elav. It didn't return to him. What's v'loi yasefa shuv elav oid? It's like a very, very powerful dun 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 dun. V'loi yasefa shuv elav oid. What's all the drama over here? It should say v'loi shuv elav. The dove did not return to him. What's v'loi yasefa shuv elav oid? What was the raven? What was the raven sent for? Why did the yoina take an olive branch? And why did this dove never, ever, ever, ever again return to Noach? Comes the Zohar HaKadosh in Parsha Shlach, and the Zohar is Megala a tremendous side. That this dove disappeared for a very important reason. Says the Zohar, Uveshaita d'chsiv lo yasfa shavei lav oid. At the time that the Torah Kedosha writes that it did not return to him again, Lo yada bar nash la'on, no man knows where the dove went. Well, you know where it went? I'm going to tell you, says the Zohar. V'hi tavas la'asra. It went to its place. Got it? Nobody knows where it went, but it says, I'm going to tell you where it went. It went to its place. Where's that? V'is genizas bepischa. It hid in the opening da. V'ihi tital itra bepumaha. The dove took a crown in its mouth. Uteshavi, and it will put it al reishe de malka Mashiach, on the head of Mashiach. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, you know where this dove went? This dove went to its opening. It took a crown. Basically, if you were to see the dove today, you would see the crown of Mashiach in the mouth of the dove. And the dove is just waiting to crown Mashiach Tzidkenu. Hafla v'fela, that's where the dove went? Yeah, that's why it says, V'lo yasva shavei lavoid. It will never ever return to Noach, because it's primed, it's waiting, it's anticipating the great mission of crowning Mashiach Tzidkenu. So the question is, where in the Psukim is there any remez that this is where the Yaina went? After all it says is, V'hine ale zayis taraf b'fiyah. There's an olive branch ripped off in its mouth. Says the Zohar in the next ois Kuf Nun, David Malka, King David, Zayis Ranon Ikri, Kame Kutchabricho, is called a leafy, luscious olive. D'chsiv, how do I know that David is called a Zayis Ranon? Va'ani kizayis Ranon b'veis Hashem. I am like a leafy olive in the house of Hashem. Ale Zayis, the Malka Mashiach braided David. When the Torah says that the Yoina took an Ale Zayis, it refers to Melech Mashiach. Meaning, he's waiting by David Melech Mashiach, he's waiting to crown the Mashiach. The da ihu, the ramez yaina da, b'yoyme de Noach. This was the remez that the dove was giving Noach. The chsiv, v'hine ale zayis taraf b'fiha, hahu ale zayis taraf v'chataf liyikra delay. He ripped off and he took it for the honor of Mashiach. B'ma, with what did he take it? B'piha, in its mouth. The kaima aresha, he stands on its head. Umekabla yikar me hayoina. So Hafla v'fela, the Zohar is Megala, that if we were to see where Mashiach is, we would also see a dove hovering over the head of Mashiach. In the mouth of the dove is the crown of Mashiach. Where is this marumaz? In the words Ale Zayis. And Zayis, of course, is a reference to David, as David HaMelech himself says, V'ani kezayis ra'anon beveis Hashem. So we think we're reading an innocuous account, a narrative that we remember from our youth, but as the Chovos HaBava says, it is incumbent upon a person to constantly revisit. I need 2 batteries over here. To constantly revisit the stories and the learning that one did when they were young, so that your learning does not remain on a childish level. It needs to be constantly updated and elevated. And here is a prime example. Who would even know that? Who would even think? So cannot be what we just learned. Okay, so who would even think that this is what the Yoina was doing? It says in the Zohar HaKadosh, that is exactly the remez over here. Ale Zayis Taraf B'fiyah. This is a remez that the Yoina was holding on to the crown of Mashiach Tzidkenu, and the Yoina is going to crown the Mashiach. Marv Rabbi, there are other remazim over here. For example, in the Sefer Zohar Chai, from the Rav HaKadosh Mikamarna, he brings a remez, the gematria of Taraf B'fiha. Taraf B'fiha is gematria David ben Yishai. So there you have it. Taraf B'fiha is gematria David ben Yishai. Also, we know that Rizal tells us that Adam is Rashi Tevois, Adam, David, Mashiach. Well, interestingly, the gematria of Adam, David, Mashiach is the same gematria as Zayis. So again, another remez to this idea that the Yoino is not just bringing back. Again, so the question is, what's he bringing back a Zayis for? It's not the tallest tree, it's a bitter tree. The answer is he wasn't trying just to demonstrate that the Mabul, the flood, had ended, but there was another message here for Noach. The message is, I am now primed. I am now awaiting the Geula Shlema. My Rabbi said, what in the world is going on over here? Here the world is flooded. There's no Klal Yisrael. Could someone get me a towel before we talk about Mashiach Tzidkenu? Get me a towel. Get me up here, let me dry off. Let me dry my feet. Let Noach get his act together. Have 10 generations. Bring an Avram Avinu into the world. Bring a Yitzchak. Bring a Yaakov. Bring a Yehuda. Bring a Malchus Beis David. All of a sudden now, the world is drowning. All the animals are dead. Everything has been destroyed. The only thing that's left is Noach and some animals on the table. Noach could barely get a good night's sleep. He's coughing up blood. Give the guy a little few days vacation and you're ready. What are you bombarding him with an Ali Zayas? Here, you see, I'm going to bring Mashiach. To who? First let's go into Galos. Let's dry ourselves off. Let's, take a hot shower. Sit by the fireplace. Rest up a little bit. And then we could have a message about the coming of Mashiach. It's not relevant now. Why, at this juncture in time, is it necessary for the Yoina to bring tidings about the coming of Mashiach? And why the Yoina? What does this Yoina got to do with the coming of Mashiach? And who is this Yoina? Why is the Yoina Zoichet to be the one to bear the message that the Mashiach is coming, and to be the one ultimately to crown Mashiach Tzidkenu? Okay, let's talk about some more halachic issues here on the Teva. Okay, Hilchos Teva. So we have this man by the name of Noach, and Noach is sending a raven to try to figure out when the Mabul will end. But let's get a few details straight. The pasuk says, "B'chodesh hasheni," on the 27th day of the month, that's Chav Zayin Cheshvan, the land dried. What did Noach do when the land dried, Rabbi say? He did nothing. Why didn't he leave the Teva? Because he wasn't allowed to. What do you mean he wasn't allowed to? There's an Isser to leave the Teva? That's right. You ready for the Isser? The Isser is that if you're in a place and there's a greater person there, you're not allowed to leave until they give you Rishus. Really? Mehechi Tesi. Where does it say that? The answer is, it's something called, I'm going to tell you a big chiddush, something called derech eretz. There's something called manners. It's a chiddush to people. There's something called manners, that if you're in a makom, you're not allowed to leave unless the person gives you shus. For example, people go to a shul. So when davening's over, they pack out. No. You go to the front, you go to the Rav, you say Agud and Shabbos, and then you could leave. Why do I have to do that? I'm a free agent. I don't go just because the rabbi owns the shul. Even if he doesn't, I'm paying his salary. No. There's something called derech eretz. Moshe has a tshuva. When you get an aliyah, you go wish the Rav shkoyach. Why? Who's he? Who does he think he is? So it's something called derech eretz. Says the Brisker Rav, it says on the 27th day of the second month that Noach, what happened? Yav Shahaaretz, Vayedaber Elokim El Noach Leimar Tseim Ateva. God told him to leave. God told him to leave. Then he leaves. Why did Hashem have to tell him to leave? The answer is because Noach was not allowed to leave until Hashem gave him Rishus. Why? Take a look at number 7. The Medrash says, Tseim Ateva, Ksiv Imruach Hamoishal Tala Alecha Mekoimcha Al Tanach Medaber B'Noach Amar Noach Kishem Shalai Nechnasti Ba'Teva Ela Bershus Kach Ein Ani Yoitze Ela Bershus. I only went on to the table with permission. I'm not leaving only with Rishus. Now let's look at that Rishus. The Rishus that Rebbeinu Shalom said was Tseim Ateva Ata Ve'ishtecha and all the animals. Mamela, question like this. Question number 1. If Noach is not allowed to leave until he gets permission, of what consequence is it to send out an animal to see if the Mabul stopped? Even if the Mabul stopped, he's not going to leave anyway, because he can't leave until God gives him permission. So of what consequence is it if the Mabul stopped? For what purpose is Noach sending out an animal to see if it stopped raining? Who cares if it stopped raining? He can't leave anyway until God gives him permission. So you'll say, he was just curious. He was just out of curiosity. They say by the Bali Musar, Rabbi Lapian was once waiting by the bus stop. So he sort of went into the street, and he looked into the street to see if the bus was coming. And then he kicked himself. He said, Why am I seeing if the bus is coming? For what? What's going to come faster if I see it's 3 blocks away? It's a waste of energy. You don't do that. You don't just do things for curiosity. It's like, people do by the elevator. The elevator is going up. They see it's going up. So what do? They press the button. Chacham from the Manishtana. You know that if you press the button 3 times, it's not coming down. Nothing's going to happen if it comes down. Why are you pressing the button? That's human nature. Noach was not subject to the foolishness of mankind. For what purpose did Noach send out the raven and the yoina? Out of curiosity? Anyway, he wasn't going to leave. So he wasn't going to leave until he got rishus. So what's he sending out the animals for? Asks the Briskerov. That's question number 2. Well, number 1. Question number 2, and this is a much more severe question. If Noach needed permission to leave the teva, that permission was extended to the animals as well, which means that until Noach was given permission for him and the animals to leave the teva, they were not allowed to leave the teva. Memela, for Noach to send out the oirev and the yoina, it was an Isser D'Oraisa. How was Noach allowed to send out the animals? He had no permission yet. Hashem didn't say yet, say min ateva ata uvanecha v'ishtecha v'chol beisecha. Hashem never gave him permission. So Hashem didn't give him permission. How was he allowed to send out the animals? He had no permission. He was violating the derech eretz of that you're not allowed to leave until Hashem gives you permission. So question number 1 was, what was he doing it for? Question number 2, it was Aser. See, we tend to think, it's such a good idea, such a brilliant idea of Noah to send out birds to see if the flood stopped. Number 1, what's he doing it for? And number 2, he wasn't allowed to. Comes the Nitziv in the Hamek Davar, look at number 8. And the Nitziv wants to know, why did Noach specifically send out these 2 birds? A raven and a pigeon. Now, I'm not a bird expert. However, says the Nitziv, there are many, many birds that fly a lot better than the raven and the pigeon. Why specifically these birds? And number 2, what permission did Noach have to send out these birds? He didn't leave until God gave him permission. So why was he allowed to send out these birds? So the Nitziv says something very interesting. That the raven and the pigeon were not among the peers of animals that Hashem told Noach, go take 2 from every animal and 7 from the kosher animals. They were not bechlal. You know what they were? Back in the day, important people, governors, officers, besides having a wife and kids, everybody had pets. So nowadays, what kind of pets do people have? They have a dog, they have a bunny rabbit, a gerbil, a cat. People have parakeets. Well, if you look through Shas, what kind of pets did people have? People had orvim and yoinim, ravens and pigeons. What? A dove, that's right. These were pets. Yeah, a dove and a raven. The Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Chav Ches Amud Aleph. Now why? So when Hashem told Noach to go onto the teva, so Hashem said, go onto the teva, ata boy, ata v'chol beischa. Included in v'chol beischa is you, your kids, and all your pets. So Noach took his wife, Eishes Noach, and Bnei Noach, and he took his pets. He took his pet raven, and he took his pet pigeon. Now, the ravens that you had as a pet, says the Nitziv, you would not send to far distances. On the other hand, the dove was like a messenger bird. You would send a letter in the mouth of the dove, and the dove would come back and bring something back in its mouth. So, first thing was, Noach sends out the raven, and when the raven saw the water was encircling the teva, he basically just circled for many times, and then he came back. But the yoina, who went a far distance, never returned. So now the question is, but how is Noach allowed to send out these animals? I thought he can't leave without permission. That's the people who were specifically commanded to go on, him, his children, and the pairs of animals, they were not allowed to leave without permission. But so to speak, the subsidiary accompaniment, the pets, who were never told explicitly to come on, they were never warned not to leave without permission. So Noach was permitted to sort of send them out. They were not under the regular guidelines of the same way I told you to go in with permission, you can only leave with permission. They were not included. That's how the Netziv learns this episode. In fact, there's a very interesting story. Gemara Bava Basra on Daf Chesam at Aleph. One of the greatest of all the Tanoim, Rabbi, there was a year of famine. There was terrible famine in Eretz Yisrael. So what did Rabbi do? Rabbi was a very wealthy man. Rabbi opened up the storehouse to be able to feed people. But of course, there are limited funds. So Rabbi said, listen, I'm going to feed people who deserve it. Anyone who learned Chumash, come in, I'm going to give you a meal. Anyone who learned Mishnayos, who learns Gemara, who learns Halacha, who learns Agada, everyone is invited in, Esk is into hate. But if you're an Amma Oretz, get lost, I can't feed you. Aval Amei Oretz al Yichnesu. Now Rabbi had a great Talmud. His name was Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram. And Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram came in, and he did not want to let on that he was Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram. He didn't want to eat, on the back of his learning. He didn't want to be nene from the Torah. So Rabbi said, do you know Chumash? He said no. You know Mishnah? He said no. So Rabbi said, then how could I feed you? He said, Parnaseni kekelev uka'orev. Feed me like a dog and like a raven. So he gave him some food. After, Rabbi was very troubled that he gave him food. He had chalisha sadas. He said, I did the wrong thing. By giving food to him, maybe I took food away from somebody else. He said, woe to me that I fed an Amma Oretz. So Reb Shimon bar Rebbe said, no, Tata, maybe that was Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram who doesn't want to be nene from his Torah. They checked and they found, and then Rebbe changed his policy. Rebbe said, everybody come in, because Rebbe realized that it could be there were some Talmidei Chachamim who would not let on that they were knowledgeable in Torah. Now the question is, what did Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram mean, feed me like a dog and like a raven? Why did he say, feed me like a dog and like a raven? So Rashi says like this. A dog means, dogs have very little to eat. Dogs are always hungry, they're always panting. Dogs have nothing to eat. Unless you're a butcher's dog. Yeah? Dogs are usually very, very hungry. So what does Hashem do? He makes a special miracle that whatever a dog eats stays in their intestines for 3 days. This way they're full. What about a oirev? Oirev also. It says, Livnei oirev asher yikra'u. That when an oirev has children, the oirev is so cruel, the oirev doesn't even feed its own children. So Hashem makes a miracle that in the excrement of the raven, worms come, and the ravens will eat the worms in their own excrement. So basically, what Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram meant, he meant the whole pilpul share. He meant, feed me like a dog and like a raven. Even the Ribbon Shem is merachim on dogs and ravens. Dogs, the food stays in their intestines 3 days. Ravens have worms in their intestines. So feed me like a raven and like a dog. So the Netziv asks on Rashi, wait a second. Here Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram is coming, making believe he's an Amma Oretz. And when he says, feed me like a dog and like a raven, he's giving a whole pilpul share. Feed me like a dog. Dogs don't have what to eat, but the food stays in their intestines for 3 days. And ravens also are achzarim on their children, so worms come out of the excrement. I mean, for someone who's trying to make believe they're an Amma Oretz, he's doing a pretty bad job over here. And also, says the Netziv, another question, Rebbe gave him to eat, and then he felt bad about it. So like, mitchila ma'asavar l'soif ma'asavar. So why did he give him the food in the first place? He gave him the food because he wanted to be merachim on him like a dog and like a raven, so then why did he feel bad afterwards? So the Netziv says, you have to understand what's going on over here. Rashi means one thing, but that's not really the pshat in the Gemara. Listen carefully. You know what Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram meant? Feed me like a dog and like a raven? People in the olden days had pets. What kind of pets? Ravens and dogs. Why would people have dogs and ravens as a pet? A dog would be your watchdog. They would scare, robbers away. And the owner would feed them for that. And ravens also would scare away the shrutzim, the mice, the rats. So what Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram was saying to Rebbe is, feed me like a dog and like a raven, meaning, So give me a little job. I'll sit at the entrance of your courtyard. I'll scare away the robbers. I'll scare away the rats and the mice. So the same way you would feed your dog and your raven, feed me. So why did Rabbi have Chalisha Sadas? Because Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram, after he said, feed me like a dog and a raven, I'm going to sit outside and scare away the rats, he went inside the Beis Medrash to learn. He didn't do his job. So Rabbi said, oy vah, he tricked me! So how could Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram lie? He wasn't lying. He meant like Rashi. He meant feed me like a dog and like a raven, who the Rebbeinu Shem is merachim on them because they don't have what to eat. But Rabbi thought he meant kipshutai, feed me like a dog and like a raven, like a pet who you feed in exchange for their service. He felt bad because Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram wasn't doing the service. How could Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram lie? Rashi's telling you what Rabbi Yonasan ben Amram really meant. But that's not what Rabbi thought he meant. What Rabbi thought he meant is like the way the Netziv understands why Noach brought the raven onto the teva, feed me like a pet. Let's go on a little further, and we're going to start to sort of crack open the sugya over here of the raven and the dove. Says the Chizkuni. Chizkuni is one of the great Rishonim, mostly based on Rashi and at least 20 Rishonim. Why did Noach send forth the raven? The answer is, the raven wasn't going to see and fly far away to determine if the land was starting to dry. What kind of bird is a raven? It's a bird of prey. Right? You know, on the interstate, when Chas Hashem, somebody hits a deer, and the carrion, it's laying there for many days, the ravens are going to come when nobody's looking, they're going to encircle, and they're going to eat up the dead animal, the roadkill. Well, there are many Rishonim who were killed in the Mabul. What would happen to a body in a flood? It would float to the top. So basically, Noach sent out the raven because if the Meisei Mabul are floating on the top of the water, the ravens would be interested in eating their nevelos. The Chizkuni says, "L'fisha darkoi lechol nevelos." The darach of the raven is to eat a carcass. V'im kalo amayim. If the water subsided, then you'd have bodies strewn everywhere, and this way Noach would have an idea if the flood is ending. Mar Rabbi comes Zohar HaKadosh, and he also further uncovers some of the mystery over here. It's so interesting when Noach sends out the Yoina. What does the pasuk say? Let's see. Noach Perek Ches. Noach Perek Ches. Rabbi, listen to this. Vayishalach es ha'orev. He sent the orev. Why did he send the orev? Doesn't say. You ever notice that? Vayishalach es ha'orev vayetze yatsav v'shoiv. Pasuk Ches, Vayishalach es hayoina lirois hakalu amayim. He sent the dove to see if the water subsided. Why does it only say by the yoina? He sent out the yoina to see if the water subsided. Why doesn't it say by the oirev? He sent out the raven to see if the water subsided. In other words, it say first he sent out the raven to see if it subsided, then he sent out the yoina. Elamai, that's not why he was sending it out. Then why does it say it by the yoina? Number 13, it should say by the oirev. And if it doesn't say that, why does it have to say by the yoina? The answer is, says Arachaim HaKadosh, look at number 14, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that when they went on to the Teva, Hashem commanded Noach ubanav ve'ishtai unashei banav. That it says, Noach, you and your son separate, and your wife and the wives of your son separate. Why? Because they were Asr B'Tasha Shamita on the Teva. Because since the world was suffering, it was not proper for them to be engaged in pleasure. And not only was Noach warned not to, all the animals were warned not to. Says the Gemara in Sanhedrin, there were three entities that did not listen. Tanur Abanan, Shloisha Shimshu B'Teva, V'Kulam Laku. They were all punished. Kelev, Oirev, V'cham. Three on the Teva did not listen. The dog, the raven, and Cham. Says Arachaim HaKadosh, Noach was not sending out the Oirev on a mission to see if the Teva, if the Mabul was slowing down. He sent out the raven. He banished the raven. He said, "Get look, he's kicking the raven off the teva." He didn't send him on a mission. He sent him out. Get out of here. You violated the command. Hashem told us, Isser Tashmish, you violated, get lost. So you'll ask, so why didn't he send out Chum and the Kelev? The answer is, there's boiling hot water out there. He's not dumping Chum out into the Mayim Roischim. He's not dumping the Kelev out into the Mayim Roischim. Even though they want you to think dogs know how to swim, you're reading too many fairy tales. They don't know how to swim, right? But the Oyrev, the Oyrev has an Eitzah, could fly around. So Noach said, get out of here, get lost. There was no mission of the Oyrev, but rather he was banishing the Oyrev. But let's take it further. It says the Oyrev was going Yatzai Halech V'Shav Ad Yevoishes Hamayim E'al Aretz. It went out, going back and returning, meaning it had no respite. Says Rashi, look at number 15. Ad Yevoishes Hamayim, until the water would dry. Pshuta K'mashmai. That the raven had no respite until the water subsided. But says Rashi, Abul Medrash Agoda, Muchan Haya Ha'Oyrev L'Shlichos Acheres. That the Oyrev was primed for another mission. When? Ba'atziras Geshamim. When, by withholding the rain, B'mei Eliyahu Shenemar V'ha'arvim Meviyim Lai Lechem Ubasar. You know why this raven was primed for another mission? You know why the raven didn't return? The raven now was preparing itself for another shlichus. What was the shlichus? In the times of Eliyahu, when Eliyahu brought famine, who fed Eliyahu? The ravens went and they took meat from the kitchen of Achav and they fed Eliyahu. Frek the Gur Aryeh. Wait a second. Why in the world did these ravens stop on the mission of Noach? They basically would no longer fulfill Noach's mission to see if the Mabul stopped, and instead they're running to hundreds of years later to try to feed Eliyahu in the time of the famine by Eliyahu Bahar HaKarmel. Why were the ravens interested in that shlichus? So Maral says a fantastic thing. What is the midah of the raven? The raven is the cruelest of all the animals. In fact, the Gemara says, if you want to become a Talmid Chacham, Ein ha-Torah miskayemes el b'mi sha'oisa atzmei achzari al banav ka'orev. If you're going to be, taking your kids to Toys R Us every day, so bleibt in Am Haaretz. You have to be an achzari like an oirev, the Gemara says. But what example do we use? Ka'orev. So it's very interesting. There are two types of people in this world. You have some people, they say, you heard who had a baby? You heard who's getting engaged? You heard who's getting married? There's some people who like to give good news. And there's some people, you heard who died? You heard who died? You heard who got run over by a tractor trailer? There's some people who have good news to tell. Some people like to be the bearers of good news. Some people, when somebody dies, they make sure they're not the ones to tell other people. They give over the basur to somebody else. There's a cloud. Don't be the bearer of bad tidings. Give that over to somebody else. Let somebody else do the honors. The Oyrev is an achzari. When Noach tells the Oyrev, go check if the Mabul stopped, if the Piranha stopped, the Oyrev said, I'm not interested in that kind of shlichus. I don't like to see and give good tidings. I'm more interested, give me a different kind of job. Eliyahu, in the times of Achav, said, Achav didn't believe that Chial, who rebuilt Yerichai, would be punished. So Eliyahu said, oh yeah, I'm going to make it stop raining immediately. The only thing is, Eliyahu can't make it stop raining until somebody's going to come to feed him, because otherwise Eliyahu's going to starve. So the raven said, I have a great idea. I'll service Eliyahu so that Eliyahu could bring piranhas to the world. Noach, don't give me the job of seeing if the Mabul stopped. Give me a different kind of job that I'm more comfortable with. Give me a job of bringing bad basuras to the world. Rabbi say, take a look at number 17. We asked, if anyway Noach's not allowed to leave the Teva until God sends him and gives him permission to leave, then why did he want to know when the Mabul would stop? Of what consequence was it if he can't leave anyway? There's an amazing sefer. The name of the sefer is Paneach Raza. What is the Paneach Raza? What is a Paneach Raza? Paneach Raza is a Rishain. Even the Marsha, I've seen the Marsha quote the Paneach Raza. Paneach Raza is one of the earliest Svarim of Ramazim al Torah. Interestingly, it was written by a Rishon by the name of Rabbeinu Yitzchak. Why did he call it Paneach Raza? What's the gematria of Yitzchak? Yeah, 208. What's the gematria of Paneach? 208. What's the gematria of Raza? 208. Says the Chidah, Rabbeinu Yitzchak thought he was naming it Paneach Raza. Paneach is Yitzchak, and Raza is Yitzchak. Little did he know that hundreds of years later, the son of the Maral of Prague would come and write Hagois on his Perush. What was the name of the son of Maral of Prague? Yitzchak. So the author thought Paneach was for him and Raza was for him. Turns out Paneach was for him and Raza was for the Magia. That's what the Chidah says. Very interesting. He says like this. The truth is, Noach could not leave the Teva unless Rebbe Shem gave him Rishus. However, Noach was a nice guy. And when all the animals were lining up, Noach was sitting there with the mashed potatoes and the peas, and all the animals were lining up, and Noach was giving them a scoop. And one day the lion said, Noach, another scoop of mashed potatoes, please? And Noach said, I would love to, but, we don't know exactly how long we're going to be here, and unfortunately, we got to save on the food. So it was very difficult for Noach to give such limited portions. So he sent out the Oirev, because if the Mabel was stopping, he'd be able to give them more generous heapings of mashed potatoes. He needed to know to be able to allocate the amount of food that he was giving out to the animals. Mar Rabbi Sai comes the Heilige Chassam Sofer. We're still within 3 days of the yard set. I think it was yesterday. And the Chassam Sofer opens up the sugya like never before. Chassam Sofer wants to know, these ravens, what was the other job they had to go on? They had to go feed Eliyahu Hanavi. And the Gemara says when Noach said, go, get out of here, go check if the Mabel stopped. They said, no, we can't. It's going to be too cold, it's going to be too hot. It's not safe, Noach. This is not a safe mission. Comes the Heilige Chassam Sofer and he asks an incredible question. Let's try to analyze for a moment. We have Noach and we have the raven. Noach says to the raven, go! And the raven says, I can't go. Why do you think the raven didn't want to go? Well, because he was afraid he was going to get cold, he was going to get hot. He said like this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a command that we're not allowed to leave until he gives us permission. Noach, you're a nice rabbi, but God said we can't go, so I'm sorry if I go. It's danger. It's dangerous. The Satan is makachek b'shas hasakana. It's against the halacha. V'hi lo titzlach. How could we go? Like the kasha, the briskerov. What was the briskerov's kasha? How could Noach send out the oirev? He has nobody's allowed to go without rishus. So the oirev was saying to Noach, you can't send me out. It's against the Torah. But what was Noach? Noach was a Talmid Chacham. What's the halacha if Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos? What does the Torah say? Blow the shofar. What do the Chachamim say? Don't blow the shofar. So who do we listen to? The Torah or the rabbis? We listen to the rabbis. Why? Yesh koyach biyad Chachamim lakar davar min haTorah. So the rabbis say don't blow, so we don't blow it. Because if we're going to blow, we're going to be blowing it. We're going to be blowing it by not listening to the rabbis. Yesh koyach lechachamim lakar davar min haTorah. So you say, but they can only do it b'shavat taseh. But here Noach is saying, B'kum ba'aseh. Could a chacham come and B'kum ba'aseh tell you to do an avera? Yes, as a hirasha. Who in history ever went and said, even though you're not allowed to bring shchutei chutz, you're not allowed to bring karbanos outside the Beis HaMikdash, I'm telling you on this occasion, you better bring a carbon. Eliyahu, it's the only time the chachamim said, go be oiker davar min haTorah B'kum ba'aseh. So the Oirev is saying to Noach, what are you doing? You're a rabbi. The rabbis can't go against the Torah. No, says, yes, I can. Yesh koyach biyad chachamim lakar davar min haTorah. And the Oirev said, no, I'm going to get cold, I'm going to get hot, Hashem's going to punish me. So Hashem says, oh, you're not listening to the chachamim. I'm going to send you on another mission. In order to be masaking that, in the times of Achav, Eliyahu is going to take a shvuah, it's not going to rain, and someone's going to have to feed Eliyahu. You're going to be the one who feeds Eliyahu at the time that Eliyahu is mitzaveh, Klal Yisrael, to gather on Har HaKarmel, to bring karbanos chutz mei mikdash. Eliyahu is the only one who is oikar davar min haTorah b'kum v'aseh, and that was the tikkun for the oirev who refused to listen to the Chachmei Yisrael. That's a Chasam Sofer on page Chavtes. There's another piece in the Chasam Sofer. Half of a fella. Again, look at number 19. It says the Chasam Sofer, I already told you that technically they were not allowed to leave the teva without permission until Hashem said, say minateva. But kai malan yesh kayach biyad chachamim lakar davar l'tzarech shah. What are Klal Yisrael compared to? An Orev? Yoinasi b'chagvei hasela. Klal Yisrael is compared to the Yoina. Yoinasi samasi. Why are we compared to the Yoina? Because we listen to the Chachmei Yisrael. When Noach told the Yoina go, the Yoina didn't ask questions. The Yoina didn't say, well, in my minhag is, in the Altaheim they didn't do this, Rabbi, so we're not. No. The Rav says, then emunas chachamim. That's straight. Doesn't matter. But it's against the Torah. Yesh kach b'yachacham lakar dam Torah bekum v'aseh l'tzarech harasha. The Yoina was samasi. He was samasi. Why are Klal Yisrael nimshal Yoina? Because we listen to the Chachmei Yisrael. Listen to the words of Chasam Sofer. Mashein kein ha'orev apikoros. The Orev was an apikoros. When you're an apikoros, the Torah says you're not to leave. We don't care what the Torah says. You listen to the Chachamim. Al ken kishashilcha b'yad chaloim. He didn't want to leave. Moiv Rabbi, why are Klal Yisrael compared to the Yoina? We have the midah of emunas Chachamim, the koyach of what? Torah Sheba'al Peh. When is the first time in history that the Chachmei Yisrael, so to speak, exercised the koyach of Torah Sheba'al Peh? Noach. When did he do it? He sent out the Yoina. Why did he do it? We don't even know why. We don't know why. Doesn't matter why. He was demonstrating yesh koyach b'yachachamim lakar davar min haTorah. Comes the Vayikra Rabbah, and the Vayikra Rabbah says, what's going to bring Mashiach? What will bring the Geula? Look at number 20. Ein kol hagoliyos halalu miskansos ela b'schus mishnayos. The Geula will only come b'schus mishnayos, not b'schus Bereshis, Shemais, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim, Maitaima, Gam ki yitnu ba'goyim ata akabtzim. When you're yitnu, the man is going to say a lashon of Mishnah, then the Geula will come. The Geula will come in the schus of Torah Sheba'al Peh. I'll tell you a gematria. This is one of the most incredible gematrias ever. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. We know the Navi Yeshaya. Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveha b'tzedakah. Okay, what's the gematria of Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh? 1076. Talmud Yushalmi. You know when it's going to be Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh? Talmud Yushalmi. V'shaveha b'tzedakah. 524. You know when it's going to be v'shaveha b'tzedakah? Talmud Bavli. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, the Geula will come b'schus Torah Sheba'al Peh. Talmud Yushalmi, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh. Talmud Bavli, v'shaveha b'tzedakah. We know during the 3 weeks, there are 22 days. How many hours in the 3 weeks? 528 hours. Gematria Mafteach. Mafteach is key. The 3 weeks is the key to the Geula. You know why? You know how many prakim there are in Mishnayos? 528. That the Geula will occur Gam ki yitnu ba'goyim ata akabtzim in the schus of Torah Sheba'al Peh. So you'll ask Kashas, was Noach a chacham? What can I tell you? That's what the Chasam Sofer says. Noach was exercising the right of yesh koyach biyad chachmei Yisrael lakar davar min haTorah b'kum aseh as a hirasha. David HaMelech. David HaMelech Malka the Mashiach. The Zohar Kadosh says, take a look at number 25. David will be Chai La'olmen. David will live forever. Even in the days of Malka Mashiach. He is the Midah of Malchus. If he's alive, his name is David. If he's Messiah, also David Shemei. Says the Zohar, take a look in number 26. He says, the Avos ha'olam, they're merumas in the Torah Shabachsav. David HaMelech, Ihu Torah Shabal Peh. David HaMelech is the Torah Shabal Peh. To the point, Rabbi say, where it says in Vayikra Rabbah, it says by David in Shmuel Aleph, Toiv Roi, he was good of appearance. You know what that means? Kol Harayehu Nizkar L'Talmudai. Anyone who saw David remembered his learning. Imagine if you had a Rebbe, you came in with coffee, 5 danishes, you sat back, you closed your ears, and you just looked at the rabbi, and then you walked out and you knew the whole shas. That's David HaMelech. You just looked at the man, Kol Harayehu Nizkar L'Talmudai. Why? Because David HaMelech is the embodiment of Torah Shabal Peh. In fact, we know there's 7 midos: Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach Hod, right? Yesod, Malchus. What's the midah of David? Malchus. What's Torah Shabal Peh called in the Zohar? Malchus. Torah Shabal Peh is called Malchus. If you take a look in, number 31, Tikunei Zohar Ois Ches, Daf Yud Zayin in the old editions, the Skarib Tikunada, Chesed, Deraya Yamina, Gvura, Deraya Smala, Tiferes Gufa, Chesed is the right arm, Gvura is the left arm, Tiferes is the body, Netzach v'Hoda are the 2 shaykin, Yesod is the Oisbers Kodesh, Malchus Peh, Torah Shabal Peh. Malchus is the mouth, that's Torah Shabal Peh. Memela David HaMelech, who's the midah of Malchus, is the embodiment of Torah Shabal Peh. All you would have to do is what? Look at David HaMelech, and you would remember your learning. All you would have to do is look at David HaMelech, and you would remember your learning. Incredible. It's interesting, in Zmiros we say, Yoina Matzah B'Manayach V'Sham Yanuchu Yagi. Unbelievable. All the Tamei Chacham over here, they know it says Yoina Matzah B'Manayach. On it, the Yoina found rest. What does on it mean? On Shabbos. The Yoina rested on Shabbos. Where in the Torah does it say that the Yoina rested on Shabbos? The answer is nowhere. So Mehechi Teisi, the Yoina rested on Shabbos. Maybe he rested on Tuesday. Maybe he rested on Thursday afternoon at 3:47. Mehechi Teisi, he rested on Shabbos. What's Shabbos? Shabbos is what? The 7th day. What midah is the 7th day? Malchus. What's Malchus? Torah Shabal Peh. In fact, the Zohar says, Vayechal Elokim b'yom hashvi, da Torah Shabal Peh, di'ihu yom hashvi, and on that day, the whole world was established. Memela, the Yoina, who is Mekayim, the mitzvah of Emunas Chachamim, the inyan of accepting Torah Shabal Peh, he rested on the 7th day. The 7th day is the day of Torah Shabal Peh. So says the Sefer Shvilei Pinchas, the following suggestion, and that is, because the Yoina was the first one who was Moiser Nefesh, to be Makabel Divrei Chachamim, despite the fact that the Oirev thought it was dangerous. How could I go out? Hashem told us not to do it. We can't go out. So the Oirev was a smart aleck. He says, we don't listen to the rabbis. We listen, it says in the Torah that this and this, and we just follow the written word. No. The Yoina says, doesn't matter what it says. We listen to the Chachmei Yisrael. We listen to the Chachmei Yisrael. It doesn't matter even if it says in the Torah something else. Doesn't matter. So in the Zechus that the Yoina was Mekabel, the Torah Shabal Peh, very interesting. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh says that we have 4 golosim, and each golos were redeemed in the Zechus of another Zechus, another one of our avos. Listen carefully. The first golos, we were Nigalu b'Zechus Avraham Avinu. The second golos were Nigalu b'Zechus Yitzchak. The third b'Zechus Yaakov. And the fourth in the Zechus of Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Well, if Moshe is going to take us out of the 4th galos, listen to these words. This is Orach Chaim HaKadosh on the words, V'yata titzades b'nei Yisrael. Says Orach Chaim HaKadosh, V'lazeh nisarech hagalos. That's why the galos is so long. Ki kol oid she'ein oiskim ba'Torah v'mitzvos. Because if we're not involved in learning, ein Moshe chafetz ligal. Moshe doesn't want to redeem us in batlonim in our Torah. Memela, Moshe Rabbeinu says, V'ata titzadas b'nei Yisrael. You know what you need to warn them on? Ein sav ela malchus. You want to know when the Melech HaMashiach will come? V'yikchu elecha shemen zayis. Shemen zayis is a remez to the Torah. Memela, if you want to know, why was the Yoina Zoicha to grab a hold of the Melech HaMashiach, and ultimately he's going to be the one who's going to crown the Melech HaMashiach? Because since Ein Kal HaGolios Miskansos Ela B'Schus, the Mishnah, and the Schus of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and the Yoina was the paragon, and was the first to demonstrate Kabbalah of Emunas Chachamim. Despite the fact that Torah says you can't go, the Yoina says, Ein Lanu Ela Divrei Chachmei Yisrael. The Yoina was awarded that the Yoina found Matzah Ale Zayis Torah Fafia. Ale Zayis is a reference to David, and it's a reference to the Schus HaTorah Sheba'al Peh. That is interesting. What does David HaMelech say? Ma hafti Torasecha Kol Hayom Yisichasi. Ma hafti Torasecha Kol Hayom is the Gematria, Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi. The Yoina was Moser Nefesh Mekabel Torah Sheba'al Peh, and therefore the Yoina is given the great job that in its mouth is the crown of Melech HaMashiach. And where is the crown? Bepiha. The Ein Peh, the Zohar says, Ela Torah Sheba'al Peh, in the Schus of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Yoina will be Moilech and will be Ma'ater, the Melech HaMashiach, Sheyavoy B'mher V'Yameinu.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.